Hello, my name is James Quirk. I'm Group Managing Editor of Labels and Labelling magazine. I'm here on the pre-show build-up day to Labelexpo Europe 2019 with Andy Thomas, Strategic Director of Labels and Labelling and Labelexpo Global Series. And we've just been discussing a 20-year veteran of Labels and Labelling. And we're just going to discuss a little bit about some of the major trends that will be on display on the show floor here in Brussels. So Andy, great to have you with us as ever. Thank you very much. A few of the major highlights that we've been looking at from the stuff we've been publishing on labelsandlabelling.com in the weeks leading up to the show. You can already extrapolate various sort of key trends that will be seen over the next few days here in Brussels. And I just want to get your opinion on some of those. It strikes me that the first one, really, as we've discussed before, is Midweb presses. Neil Peter, Omet, Lombardi are just three suppliers who are launching here for the first time dedicated Midweb presses of 22-inch web widths and above. What is behind this trend and what does it offer to label converters?
Yeah, I think that the trend towards Midweb presses is something which has kind of grown organically out of the label industry. Because if you look at, originally the industry was narrow web. I mean, typically kind of, 13-inch, 13-inch machines. But as we moved into film production, so it's both flexible packaging and it's also film labels, so particularly shrink sleeves, which are growing fast as a segment. And the format of these labels, of flexible packaging like a pouch, is a lot bigger than a label. So in terms of the web, it makes more sense to have a wider web width to be more efficient to cut down the waste. So these kind of machines, kind of web width is really ideally suited for kind of filmic products, whether that be a flexible packaging or whether it be shrink sleeves. And I think that what we're seeing at the show here is also a big push towards understanding what that means for label converters. It's not an easy transition to make. So we have the flexible packaging arena here, where we also have the Bob's M6 press, and what that's going to be demonstrating is, so they've actually printed something and they've sent it for migration testing and then had it back again. So we kind of reverse engineered it. So it's also explaining to converters who are using UV Flexo what they need to do to comply with, for example, the Swiss ordinance on indirect food contact packaging. So it all kind of comes with a package. These new films, these new applications, the ability to get short-run, value-added, flexible packaging to compete with the guys who've got the wide web presses. So we're not going head-to-head with those guys. It's finding really a niche market. So yeah, very exciting.
You mentioned the flexible packaging arena. Obviously, Bob's there with their M6 press, as you said. Zycon will be there with the CX500 printing pouches as well. And of course, HP Indico on the digital side too, showing their 20,000 press for shrink sleeve production. Flexible packaging, a key trend at the show. It really shows that, I mean, we talked about it a little bit last year in Chicago, that, and 2 years ago in Brussels, that Labelexpo is much more really nowadays than just a label show. These label converters are branching into other types of production, and you can see that on the show floor. Increasingly, ever more a sort of package printing show rather than just labels. So that's the first sort of major trend that you can see on the show floor here in Brussels. Hybrid printing seems to have come of age. Another key trend to be seen. Last year in Chicago seemed to be a breakthrough show in terms of the amount of hybrid presses on display. And it seems that in the sort of 12 months leading up to that point, that the inkjet units had reached levels of speed and quality that began to make hybrid production a really sort of viable alternative. Here in Brussels this year, all the major press manufacturers, I think it's fair to say, have some sort of hybrid offering. So could you talk to us a little bit about what you expect to see on the show floor with regards to hybrid technology?
Yeah, I think it's been, I think you're right, James. We've seen this now, the trend sort of 3 or 4 years, developing and growing. The first kind of real kind of production machines that you saw in Chicago. And I think that what we're seeing at this show is kind of an extension of that concept in many ways, a kind of maturation of the what you might call, although it's a young technology, the traditional, which is basically you've got a flexo press, you break it, you put a multicolour digital unit in the middle of it, Then you specify kind of mix and match of conventional units. And certainly, you're right, press manufacturers are showing that. In addition to that, I think what's kind of new at this show is another hybrid route, which is to put the digital module onto an existing flexo press. And those primarily going to be single color. That's either going to be a white, maybe a first down white as a replacement for a screen, or opaque flexo white, but also jetting varnishes as well. So I think we're seeing that the kind of replacement for a varnish plate, a flexo varnish plate, which can spot varnish, matte and gloss on a digital press. So I think also we're seeing kind of the digital press guys are kind of going into the hybrid route as well. They're making alliances with the finishing manufacturing people, and they're basically bringing their own hybrid presses, but based upon their digital press, but adding in conventional units. I think the sort of idea about the varnish unit, digital varnish unit. Again, we saw this. Gallus had a unit, and Zarwish FFVI was showing one last show. I think we're going to see much more of a trend at this show, either a digital back plate, flexo white, or as some kind of added value finishing unit. So yeah, I think the hybrid concept is really kind of mixing and matching in very many interesting ways.
Fantastic. Sustainability, I think, is another key trend that can be seen on the show floor over the next few days, we expect. You've written recently about the fact that this is about much more than just down gauging of materials, thinner materials. What other advances can we expect to see in the area of sustainability this week?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that the down gauging has been going on for some time now, and you start to reach the law of diminishing returns, really, where you can't really go too much down gauge too much more without sacrificing some of the performance characteristics for kind of die cutting or on the application machines. So there's probably not too much further to go in terms of down gauging. I think if you look at what's happening in terms of, for example, adhesives. So again, we've sort of seen this slow introduction of the units, but there'll be more here. So like switchable adhesives, which mean that labels will kind of fall away, or the adhesive will fall away in a recycling bath. So it makes it possible to recover clean PET, for example, clean glass. But I think we're also seeing more post-consumer plastics being recycled into virgin label materials. This has been a problem up to now because it's been hard to get. You need a source of clean PET. So it's a kind of circular thing. But actually now we're getting the technologies where we can start to, from the label industry, we can start to get clean PET by taking labels off cleanly. That can come back through the loop. So I think that's some circular economy. I mean, what the EU is all about now is circular economy. I think in terms of shrink sleeves, we're seeing now, for example, floatable shrink sleeves, whereby the problem up to now has been that the shrink sleeve and the PET bottle have not been able to separate. And now we're seeing technologies whereby they can separate out shrink sleeves in a recycling system. And the third area to look at is the flexible packaging. Obviously, as we said, it's a big thing at the show. The flexible packaging has its own sustainability challenges. The issue of we have multi-laminate materials, which are essentially non-recyclable. Although, I mean, there are other advantages because it's lightweighting, so you're not putting much CO2 in the transport train and such like. But even so, I think what we're seeing at the show is we're seeing some recyclable mono materials, flexible packaging materials, which look like they could overcome that issue. Biomaterials, we're looking at kind of sugar-based materials, sugar-based films, a whole range of new kind of biomass types. They all have their own challenges. For example, the biomass can have problems in a PET recycling stream. So these are kind of things that we're going to have to think about in a broad level. But what it shows, I think, is that whereas 3 or 4 years ago, for brand owners, it was an optional thing. And actually, if it cost them much more money, they probably weren't going to be quietly not do it. Now it's becoming a core part of the specification of a label. And label converters are increasingly going to be asked, by their customers, who are being asked by their customers, by the end users, is this a circular product? Can it be recycled back through the system? Can it be reused? Can the value be kept? Will it not be put into a landfill?
A lot of these sustainability trends can be seen at a special feature area here at the show, the Sustainability Cafe, which alongside the Flexible Packaging Arena are two new special feature areas at the show. That leads us into our next and final trend, which relates to a previous special feature area, the automation arena that's ran in Brussels 2017 and Chicago 2018. Automation is another key trend that will be seen here at the show. What advances have been made in the last since the last Labelexpo Europe in that area?
I think if you look at the way that automation has impacted, if you like, the kind of hardware, also the workflow. So we saw at the last show in Brussels here, and then last year in Chicago, real kind of coming mainstream on flexo presses. So whereas before it was necessary for an operator to physically do a lot of manual operations on the press, for example, setting the printing pressure, making sure that the registration was right, etc. All that now is being handled automatically by feedback loop systems on the press. Color is being managed more in pre-press. So by the time the job gets on the press, they're not chasing color, they're not wasting. So effectively pre-press is starting to control color, which means you need automation in pre-press in terms of, are we matching spot colors with, say, seven fixed color inks? So you can automate that process. So what a brand owner proofs on a 7-color inkjet proofing press is the same thing that's going to be separated out and run on that press. So that's the kind of hardware side of things. If you look at the workflow side of things, so we're seeing AI really, artificial intelligence is really starting to make an impact. More likely to be called machine learning. So for example, if you look at what the inspection guys are doing here, very interesting to see what they're doing. So they're basically looking at the cameras are learning what's a mistake, what a specification is. They're making contact back with the pre-press system. So they're basically going from the approved data in the pre-press system and using that to monitor the job. And increasingly, they'll be able to make suggestions back to the press. So you're going to get a feedback loop. We're already seeing intelligent predictive maintenance systems, where it's looking at key parts of the press, thinking what might be wearing out, if there are problems and issues. And before that becomes an issue, they're alerting an operator. Even seeing things now like smart goggles, so they can kind of what the operator sees is going back to the plant. But that's all being taken into machine learning systems. So these kind of predictive maintenance systems are going to get more and more and more smart. And I think as we go forward, we're going to see it becoming kind of pretty much standard on all levels of machinery. So the third area is really factory automation. And what we're looking at here is the use of intelligent systems to help run a plant. Because if you look at the trends that we've been talking about, James, today, how complex it's becoming to manage even these smaller label operations. You've got conventional presses, digital presses, various kinds of hybrid. You're running maybe flexible packaging, 3 types of labels with different colors and different embossing and decoration. At the moment, most of that is planned manually. And a lot of warehousing, a lot of buying is still done manually. What I see when you visit the show here, go to the MIS guys, and it's amazing the kind of stuff that they're looking at. So not fully automating the factory, so not autonomously, but working with cyber assistance of existing human personnel. There's always going to be a matter of judgment, which job's more important than another job. But generally speaking, I think factory automation is going to be a real key trend at this show.
All these trends and much more on show over the next few days here in Brussels at Labelexpo Europe 2019. The Labels and Labeling editorial team, we're all here on site, and keep an eye out for our daily newsletter, the Show Daily, live from the show floor, which will be sent out late afternoon each day, apart from the final day that we have a preview edition today, and then issues going out on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, rounding up all the latest news from the show floor. So please look out for that. Thank you very much, Andy.
Thanks, Jay.
Thank you.